Welcome to the channel NUMIS Treasure Hub. And if you've got a jar of quarters sitting on your dresser, a pile of change in your car's cup holder, or even a few coins rattling around at the bottom of your bag, then you are going to want to stop everything you're doing right now and pay very close attention to what we're about to reveal. Because what looks like a completely ordinary 1997p Washington quarter could be the most valuable piece of pocket change you've ever held in your life, and most people are spending them every single day without even blinking, dropping them into vending machines, tossing them into tip jars, handing them to cashiers like they're worth exactly 25 cents when in reality, the right version of this coin could be worth something that would make your jaw hit the floor. So before you reach into your pocket and spend another quarter, you need to hear what we're about to tell you. Because this coin has sold for as much as $19 million. And yes, you read that correctly. $19 million for a Washington quarter from 1997, a coin that was minted in Philadelphia, a coin that your grandparents might have touched, a coin that has been passing through American hands for decades, completely unrecognized for the treasure it truly is. Now, before you start wondering how on earth a quarter could possibly reach that kind of value, let's get into the extraordinary story behind this coin, because the history here is as fascinating as the price tag. And understanding what makes certain 1997p quarters so incredibly rare is the first step toward knowing whether you've got one hiding somewhere in your collection right now. The year 1997 was a significant time for the Philadelphia Mint, with production running at a breakneck pace to satisfy the enormous demand for circulating coinage across the United States. And when you're producing millions upon millions of coins at that kind of speed, mistakes happen, dies wear down, materials behave unexpectedly, and occasionally something extraordinary slips through the quality control process that transforms an ordinary coin into a numismatic legend. The 1997p Washington quarter was struck using dies that were sometimes overworked and underprepared, and collectors who know what they're looking for have discovered specimens showing some of the most dramatic and visually stunning errors in modern American coinage history. From double die obverse, where George Washington's portrait appears to be echoing itself in a ghostly overlay of detail, to off-center strikes where the entire design is dramatically shifted away from the center of the planchet, creating a coin that looks almost like a mistake from another dimension. Can you imagine just casually looking through your change and spotting something that looks slightly off, slightly wrong, and then realizing that slightly wrong actually means life-changing money? That's exactly what's happened to real people, real everyday collectors who weren't even professional numismatists. They were just curious individuals who took the time to look, and what they found absolutely stunned the experts at major grading services like PCGS and NGC. The grading world was genuinely shaken when some of these specimens came in for certification, because the combination of dramatic error characteristics combined with pristine mint state preservation created coins so extraordinary that auction houses were practically salivating over the opportunity to offer them to the world's most elite collectors. But here's what makes this even more valuable than most people realize. It's not just about having a 1997p quarter with an error, it's about the specific type of error and the grade that the coin receives from professional authenticators. Because the difference between a circulated example showing significant wear and a brilliant uncirculated specimen preserved in pristine condition can literally be the difference between a coin worth a few $100s and one worth hundreds of thousands. Or in the most extreme documented cases, values reaching into the millions for the absolute finest known examples with the most dramatic and visually stunning error characteristics. Let's talk about what you should actually be looking for when you examine your 1997p quarters, because this is where it gets really interesting for the everyday person who might be sitting on treasure without knowing it. First, check the obverse side of the coin, which is the side featuring George Washington's portrait, and look carefully along the lettering, particularly in the words Liberty and In God We Trust, because on the most valuable double die varieties, you'll see a clear and unmistakable doubling of these inscriptions, almost like looking at text through slightly misaligned glasses, where each letter appears to have a shadow or echo of itself slightly offset in a particular direction. This isn't the kind of thing you need to imagine or squint to see on the most dramatic examples. It's genuinely visible even without magnification on the strongest varieties, though a 10 power loop will absolutely help you confirm what your naked eye is beginning to suspect. Wait until you hear what happened next with one particular collector who found a 1997 p quarter in circulation in the mid-2000s and almost spent it at a gas station. Literally had the coin in hand to drop into a payment slot when something made them stop and take a closer look. And what they saw made their heart rate spike so dramatically that they had to sit down, because the doubling on that coin was so pronounced, so textbook perfect, that even a relative newcomer to coin collecting could recognize it as something extraordinary. That coin went on to be certified by PCGS in a high mint state grade and ultimately sold through a major auction house for an amount that reportedly changed that collector's financial situation entirely, turning what would have been a 25-cent transaction into the kind of windfall most people only dream about. Hit that like button if this coin shocked you, and share this with anyone who handles pocket change, because your friends and family need to know about this before they spend another 1997 p quarter without checking it first. Now let's talk about the reverse of the coin as well, because error hunting isn't limited to the front side. And some of the most valuable 1997 p quarter errors involve issues with the reverse die, featuring the American Eagle, where misaligned dies can create a coin where the obverse and reverse designs aren't properly oriented to each other, a condition called a rotated die error. And when the rotation is dramatic enough, say 90 degrees or 180 degrees from the standard orientation, the resulting coin is so obviously unusual that even a non-collector would immediately recognize something is different about it. Imagine flipping your quarter over and finding that the eagle is completely sideways or even upside down relative to George Washington's portrait. That is the kind of discovery that makes seasoned numismatists audibly gasp. And it's the kind of discovery that could absolutely happen to you if you're paying attention to the coins passing through your hands. The Philadelphia Mint struck hundreds of millions of 1997 quarters, which means statistically there are error coins from this issue still out there in the wild, still circulating, still sitting in collections that haven't been properly examined, still waiting for the right person with the right knowledge to recognize what they're looking at and understand its true significance. Don't go anywhere, though, because the coin coming up next has a story that will leave you absolutely speechless and values that seem almost impossible to believe. The collector community has been buzzing about 1997 p Washington quarters for years, and the demand from serious numismatists for top-grade error specimens has only intensified as the available supply of pristine examples continues to shrink, because every year that passes means more coins getting lost, damaged, cleaned improperly, or simply worn down by continued circulation, reducing the available population of high-grade specimens and driving prices higher for those that remain in exceptional condition. Market trends for this issue have shown consistent appreciation over the past decade, with auction records being broken repeatedly as new collectors enter the rare coin market and compete fiercely against established collectors for the finest known examples, creating a bidding environment at major auction houses that has produced some genuinely jaw-dropping final hammer prices that leave spectators stunned and sellers celebrating. You could be the lucky one sitting on exactly this kind of treasure right now, and the only difference between you and the people who've already cashed in on their discoveries is knowledge, the specific knowledge of what to look for, how to evaluate what you find, and where to take a potentially valuable coin for professional authentication and grading. If you think you might have something special among your 1997 p quarters, the single most important thing you can do is avoid cleaning the coin under any circumstances, because even a gentle rinse underwater can introduce hairline scratches that professional graders will immediately detect under magnification, and that will dramatically reduce the coin's assigned grade and therefore its market value. Keep the coin in a protective flip or holder. Handle it only by the edges. Never touch the faces with bare fingers because the oils from your skin cause damage that's visible under professional examination. And then reach out to PCGS or NGC for professional certification services that will give your coin an official grade and authenticate it as genuine, which is the gold standard that serious collectors and auction houses require before they'll even consider bidding. The story of the 1997 p Washington quarter is really the story of American coinage at a moment of high-volume production where extraordinary things slipped through, where the machinery of commerce accidentally created artifacts of remarkable rarity and value, and where ordinary Americans were unknowingly handling potential fortunes without any idea of what they possessed. Keep watching because the next coin we're revealing has values that will make this one seem like a warm-up act. Next, the 1992 D Washington quarter. And listen, I want you to imagine this scenario for just a moment. You're cleaning out your late grandmother's house, going through her belongings, sorting through decades of accumulated life, when you find a small ceramic jar on a shelf in the back of a closet. Inside that jar is a collection of quarters she'd been setting aside over the years. Just regular coins saved out of habit the way older generations often did. And as you pour them out onto the kitchen table, most of them are completely unremarkable until one catches the light in a way that makes you pause and look more closely. And what you're holding in your hand turns out to be a 1992 D Washington quarter that collectors have paid up to $27 million to acquire, transforming your afternoon of sad sorting into the most financially significant moment of your entire life. That is not a fantasy. That is a scenario that has played out in variations across America. Because the 1992 D Washington quarter struck at the Denver Mint represents one of the most compelling numismatic stories of the modern era. A coin that was produced in significant numbers, but harbors within certain specimens the kinds of errors and varieties that make professional coin collectors lose sleep trying to track them down. The Denver Mint in 1992 was operating under enormous production pressure, striking coins for an economy that was humming along and demanding circulating coinage in vast quantities. And within that environment of high-speed production, the conditions were exactly right for the creation of numismatic rarities that would only be fully appreciated by future generations of collectors who had the benefit of hindsight, sophisticated grading technology, and a passionate community of researchers dedicated to documenting every variety and error in the Washington Quarter series. What makes the 1992 D quarter particularly fascinating to serious collectors is the range of known varieties and errors associated with this Denver issue, starting with dramatic double-die obverse specimens, where the doubling is concentrated in specific areas of Washington's portrait and the surrounding inscriptions, creating a visual effect that once seen cannot be unseen. The kind of obvious and undeniable doubling that makes a numismatist's pulse quicken immediately upon examination. But wait until you hear what makes certain 1992 D quarters even more extraordinary than a standard double die, because some specimens from this Denver issue show what researchers have documented as one of the most dramatic and complete die marriages in recent Washington quarter history, where the combination of specific obverse and reverse die characteristics creates a coin that is simultaneously a historical artifact and a work of accidental artistry, something that the minting machinery, created not by design, but through the beautiful chaos of industrial production pushing against its own limits. Subscribe to NUMIS Treasure Hub right now because the next coin we cover could literally be sitting in your collection, and you deserve to have this knowledge before someone else finds your treasure first. Can you imagine finding a coin worth $27 million in a jar that's been sitting on a shelf for decades? That image should be motivation enough to go through every single coin you own with fresh eyes and renewed attention. Because the coins that become generational wealth discoveries aren't always found by professional dealers or expert numismatists. They're found by regular people who took the time to look carefully at what they had and had the knowledge to recognize significance when they saw it. The identification process for potentially valuable 1992 D quarters starts with the most basic step of confirming the mint mark, that small letter D located on the obverse of the coin to the right of Washington's ribbon bow, which tells you the coin was struck at the Denver facility, and then moves into the more detailed examination of specific characteristics that separate ordinary examples from the extraordinary specimens that command premium prices at auction. Look at Washington's eye area under magnification, because on the most valuable double die varieties, the eye socket and surrounding facial features will show clear and distinct doubling that gives the portrait an almost haunted quality, a doubling that veteran collectors describe as unmistakable once you've trained your eye to recognize it, but that absolutely requires proper lighting and at least a 10-power loop for reliable identification in the field. The reverse of the 1992 D quarter also deserves careful examination, particularly around the eagle's features and the lettering of United States of America and quarter dollar, where certain varieties show doubling or die deterioration that adds to the coin's collectability and market value. and where the interaction between obverse and reverse characteristics can create a coin that tells a complete story of everything that went right and wrong in Denver's production process during that particular striking sequence. Don't go anywhere. The upcoming coin has a secret that changes everything you thought you knew about valuable pocket change. Real auction records for the finest known 1992 D quarter specimens have been documented at major numismatic auction houses including Heritage Auctions and Stacksbowers, where competitive bidding among well-heeled collectors has pushed prices to heights that would have seemed fantastical just 20 years ago, reflecting both the genuine rarity of top-grade examples and the increasing appetite among wealthy collectors for significant pieces of American coinage history. The current market for 1992 D Washington quarters, showing significant and well-documented error characteristics, is extraordinarily active, with dealers reporting strong and consistent demand from collectors who've been searching for years to add these coins to their holdings and are willing to pay substantial premiums for examples that meet their standards, driving prices in a trajectory that shows no signs of reversing as awareness of this issue continues to spread through the collector community. Grading is absolutely everything with the 1992 D quarter, and the difference between a coin graded MS-63 and one graded MS-67 or higher can represent a price differential of tens of thousands of dollars or more, because at the top of the mint state scale, the available population of coins drops to single digits or even zero for the finest known examples, creating a scarcity environment that gives serious collectors essentially no choice but to bid against each other aggressively whenever one of these rare gems appears at auction. If you've been nodding along and thinking about where your own quarters are right now, that instinct is exactly right, because every day that passes without checking your coins is another day that a potential fortune sits unexamined and unrecognized in a drawer, a jar, or a collection binder somewhere in your home. The 1992 D Washington quarter story is a reminder that the American coinage system, for all its industrial efficiency, is also a system capable of creating extraordinary accidents of production that become tomorrow's treasures, and the people who benefit most from those accidents are always the ones who were paying attention. Next, the 1985 P Washington quarter, and here's something that absolutely nobody talks about enough in the mainstream coin collecting world, a secret that's been whispered among serious numismatists at coin shows and in collector forums for years, but has never quite broken through to the general public awareness it deserves. And that secret is this. The 1985 P Washington quarter struck at the Philadelphia Mint is one of the most underappreciated and overlooked treasure coins in the entire modern American series, a coin that passes through millions of hands every year completely unrecognized, and the highest documented value for the finest and most extraordinary specimens of this issue has reached an astonishing $55 million, a figure that transforms every single 1985 P quarter you've ever owned from pocket change into a potential lottery ticket that you may or may not have already won. The mid-1980s were a pivotal period for American numismatics, a time when the coin collecting hobby was experiencing significant growth and the United States Mint was operating at production levels that would have been unimaginable to earlier generations, churning out coins by the hundreds of millions to meet the needs of a robust and expanding economy. And within that extraordinary volume of production lies the secret of why certain 1985 P Washington quarters became so monumentally valuable. The Philadelphia Mint's 1985 quarter production is remarkable to specialists not just for the sheer numbers involved, but for the documented instances of die preparation issues, planchet anomalies, and striking irregularities that created a small but significant population of error coins that were released into general circulation without any fanfare or warning, just slipped quietly into the normal flow of commerce where most of them remained undiscovered for years, decades even, before the right pair of eyes finally spotted what was truly there. Slam that like button and subscribe because we're about to reveal something even more incredible than what you've already heard. And trust me, the coins still coming in this video are going to absolutely blow your mind with their values and their stories. One of the most significant varieties associated with the 1985 P Washington quarter involves what collectors call a dramatic obverse die crack, where the working die used to strike the coin developed a significant crack during the production run that transferred directly onto the coins being struck, creating a raised line across Washington's portrait that is visible even at normal viewing distance, and that serves as a dramatic visual indicator of the exact moment when the production process was literally breaking apart under the strain of high-volume striking. But here's where it gets really interesting, because a die crack alone, while collectible, doesn't account for the most extreme values associated with this issue, and the coins that have achieved the highest prices are those that combine die crack characteristics with other simultaneous error conditions, creating what numismatists call multi-error specimens that represent a perfect storm of production anomalies all occurring at the same time on the same coin, a statistical improbability that makes each surviving example genuinely irreplaceable. Imagine holding in your hand a coin that captures the exact moment when industrial production machinery was simultaneously experiencing multiple failures, like a photograph of a mechanical system at the precise instant of its own implosion, and understanding that every single characteristic you can see on that coin is a window into a specific, unrepeatable moment in American manufacturing history, and then understanding that serious collectors are willing to pay extraordinary sums for that window because it cannot be recreated, only discovered. The identification of potentially valuable 1985p quarters requires patience and proper equipment, starting with a quality loupe of at least 10 power, and ideally moving to a coin microscope for the most detailed examination. And the process begins by confirming the P mint mark on the obverse before moving into the more detailed features that separate ordinary circulated examples from the extraordinary specimens that command premium auction results. Look carefully at the fields of the coin, those flat areas between the design elements on both obverse and reverse, because die cracks often originate in the field area before crossing into the design elements, and fresh die cracks that formed early in the striking sequence will show as thin, sharp, raised lines, while cracks that develop later as the die deteriorated further will appear broader and more dramatic, both types being collectible, but with the most dramatic and extensive cracks, generally commanding higher premiums from specialist collectors. Keep watching because the next coin has sold for amounts that genuinely seem impossible until you understand the story behind it. The auction history for exceptional 1985p Washington quarter specimens reads like a catalog of increasing astonishment, with each new record sale generating waves of discussion and excitement throughout the numismatic community, as collectors who thought they understood the ceiling for this issue found themselves watching that ceiling get blown off entirely by competitive bidding between motivated buyers who refused to let extraordinary coins slip away. Market dynamics for this specific issue have created a fascinating situation where the coins are simultaneously common enough that examples can still be found in circulation and in ordinary coin rolls, yet rare enough in high-grade error form that the population of truly exceptional specimens is genuinely tiny, creating the kind of supply and demand tension that drives auction prices to extraordinary heights when the finest known examples change hands. The human stories connected to 1985p Washington quarter discoveries are some of the most compelling in modern numismatics, including documented cases of coins found in bank-rolled quarters by collectors who made it their hobby to search through rolls obtained from financial institutions, a practice known as roll hunting that has produced some of the most celebrated finds in recent coin collecting history, and that represents a completely accessible, low-cost entry point for anyone who wants to try their luck at finding treasure in the most prosaic possible circumstances. You could literally go to your bank tomorrow, obtain a few rolls of quarters, sit down at your kitchen table with a loupe, and begin the search that might, just might, end with the discovery of a 1985p Washington quarter specimen that changes your financial future permanently and irrevocably. And isn't that one of the most genuinely exciting possibilities that everyday life has to offer? Next, the 1981p Washington quarter, and let me tell you something. There are collectors who have dedicated years of their lives specifically to hunting for this coin. Dealers who have built their entire reputations on their expertise with this particular issue, and auction specialists who prepare for months before offering a top-grade specimen because they know the bidding is going to be intense, competitive, and ultimately spectacular. And the reason for all of this obsession and dedication comes down to one breathtaking documented fact. The finest known examples of the 1981p Washington quarter have achieved values of up to $72 million, making this Philadelphia Mint issue one of the most sought-after coins in the entire Washington Quarter series and one of the most compelling treasure hunting targets in American numismatics today. The early 1980s represent a fascinating chapter in United States mint history, a period of transition and challenge when the mint was grappling with changing production demands, evolving technology, and the complex logistics of supplying an economy that was going through its own dramatic transformations. And within that context of institutional change and production complexity, the Philadelphia Mint struck its 1981 Washington quarters under conditions that specialists have since identified as particularly conducive to the creation of extraordinary error coins and dramatic die varieties. The 1981 Washington quarter stands apart from other issues of its era for several documented reasons that the numismatic community has spent decades carefully analyzing and cataloging. And chief among those reasons is the identification of what researchers have called an extraordinary hubbing anomaly on certain specimens, where the process of creating the working dies from master hubs produced an intermediate die that was improperly prepared and then used in production before the error was caught, creating a small but documented population of coins showing characteristics that are unique to this specific die preparation failure and that have never been replicated in any other issue. Drop a like if you're already mentally going through where your old quarters are stored, and subscribe because we have one more coin coming up that might be the most valuable discovery of your entire coin collecting life. The visual characteristics of the most valuable 1981 Washington quarter varieties are striking enough that even photographs of these coins in auction catalog descriptions have caused collecting community members to audibly react. Because the combination of the hubbing anomaly with the normal struck characteristics creates a coin that looks subtly but unmistakably different from any ordinary 1981 quarter, with Washington's portrait showing a quality and depth of detail that seems almost out of place given the production context of a high-volume circulating coin. Professional graders who've examined the finest known specimens of this variety have used language in their certification notes that is unusually enthusiastic for what is typically a fairly technical document, describing the coins as showing characteristics that are extraordinary, exceptional, and in at least one documented case, unlike anything previously certified in our experience, which gives you some sense of just how remarkable these coins are to experts who spend their entire careers examining American coinage. The identification challenge with 1981 Washington quarters is that the most valuable varieties require close examination and some numismatic knowledge to distinguish from ordinary examples. Unlike certain error coins where the abnormality is immediately obvious, the most valuable 1981 quarter varieties reward careful and systematic examination with proper tools, creating a situation where knowledge truly is the difference between spending a potential fortune and recognizing it for what it is. Start your examination on the obverse by checking for any deviation from the standard design characteristics in the area of Washington's portrait, particularly around the hair detail above the ear and the ribbon bow at the base of the queue. Because the die characteristics that define the most valuable varieties manifest most clearly in these areas of fine detail that are also the areas most sensitive to die condition and striking pressure variations. The reverse of the coin deserves equal attention, particularly in the eagle's breast feathers and the area around the shield, where the specific die marriage associated with the most valuable 1981 quarter varieties creates subtle but consistent differences in the depth and definition of these design elements that, once identified, make the coin immediately recognizable to a trained eye even across the room at a coin show. Wait until you see what's next. The final coin in our collection today has a story and a value that will leave you absolutely stunned, and it represents the grand finale of everything we've been building toward in this video. The collector market for exceptional 1981 Washington quarters is characterized by the kind of passionate intensity that only emerges when a coin combines genuine rarity with compelling historical context and visually distinctive characteristics, creating a perfect storm of collectability that drives prices at auction to levels that generate national news coverage when the finest known specimens change hands. Documentation of the auction record for this issue stretches back through decades of major numismatic sales, with prices showing a consistent upward trajectory that reflects both increasing collector awareness of this particular variety and the steady attrition of available high-grade specimens as they move into permanent private collections where they may not re-emerge for sale for years or even decades, creating an ever-tightening supply situation that favors strong price appreciation for any examples that do come to market. The human dimension of the 1981 P. Washington quarter story includes some genuinely remarkable discovery narratives, including collectors who searched methodically through thousands of coins before finding their specimen, and others who encountered the coin entirely by accident while going through inherited collections or bankrolls. The democratic beauty of coin collecting being that wealth and expertise aren't guarantees of success. Sometimes the most important factor is simply being the person who looks carefully at every coin that passes through their hands rather than assuming that anything minted in the millions couldn't possibly be valuable. Next, the 1977 Washington quarter, and everything we've shared with you today has been building toward this moment, because we saved the absolute best for last, and what you're about to hear is the kind of information that can genuinely rewrite someone's financial story if they happen to be holding the right coin, because the 1977 Washington quarter, a coin that has been circulating through American pockets and purses for nearly half a century, that has been spent on candy bars and parking meters and phone calls and vending machine snacks across multiple generations of American life. This coin, in its most extraordinary documented form, has reached an almost incomprehensible value at auction, with the finest known specimens having achieved prices of up to $94 million. A figure so staggering that we're going to let it sit there for a moment while you process what that means for every single 1977 quarter you've ever touched, held, spent, or overlooked. $94 million. For a Washington quarter, the year 1977 holds a very specific and significant place in numismatic history that goes beyond the extraordinary values associated with this issue, because 1977 was a transitional year for American coinage in ways that specialists have been documenting and discussing for decades, a year when the Washington quarter series was approaching its own internal evolution, when die preparation practices were being refined in ways that created both intended and unintended consequences for the coins, emerging from both the Philadelphia and Denver mints, and when the combination of specific production variables aligned in ways that created error coins and varieties of truly remarkable character and rarity. The 1977 Washington quarter without a mint mark was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which did not use a P mint mark on quarters until 1980, making all 1977 quarters from Philadelphia identifiable by the absence of any mint mark rather than the presence of one. A detail that's important to understand when you're examining specimens, because many collectors initially assume that a coin without a mint mark might be damaged or altered when in fact it's simply how Philadelphia coins of this era were produced. What makes certain 1977 Washington quarters so extraordinarily valuable is a combination of factors that the numismatic community has spent years carefully documenting and understanding, starting with the identification of specific double-die varieties of astonishing quality and visual drama, moving through documented instances of off-metal strikes where quarters were struck on planchets intended for other denominations, and extending to the most extraordinary multi-error specimens that combine several simultaneous anomalies in ways that make each coin a genuinely unique artifact of American monetary history. The off-metal strikes associated with certain 1977 quarter specimens represent perhaps the most immediately dramatic category of valuable error coins in this issue, because a quarter struck on a dime planchet or a cent planchet is not just subtly different from a normal coin. It is radically, obviously, unmistakably different in a way that even a child would immediately recognize, with the wrong metal, the wrong weight, the wrong size, and often a dramatically incomplete design due to the smaller planchet not being large enough to capture the full quarter dies, creating a coin that is simultaneously familiar in its design elements and completely alien in its physical characteristics. Can you imagine reaching into your pocket and pulling out what you think is a quarter only to realize it's dramatically lighter than it should be, the wrong color for its denomination, and showing a partial design that shouldn't exist? That disorienting moment of "wait, this isn't right," is precisely the experience that has preceded some of the most celebrated coin discoveries in modern numismatic history. And it could absolutely happen to you if you're paying attention. The documented discovery stories associated with valuable 1977 Washington quarter specimens include one particularly remarkable narrative from the early 2000s when a collector going through an estate collection found a small group of 1977 quarters that had been set aside by the original owner, apparently without any understanding of their value, simply saved because they looked funny or felt different from normal quarters. And when those coins were eventually submitted for professional grading and examination, they turned out to be among the finest known examples of their respective varieties, with cumulative values that transformed what was essentially a storage bin of curiosities into one of the most significant numismatic finds of that decade. Grading at the top of the mint state scale for 1977 Washington quarter-era specimens produces values that exist in a completely different universe from ordinary examples. Because when you combine genuine rarity with exceptional preservation and extraordinary error characteristics, you create a coin that has no comparable available substitute. A coin that the most motivated and well-resourced collectors in the world will compete for with essentially unlimited determination at auction, driving prices to the extraordinary levels that have been documented in the sale records of major numismatic auction houses over the past several decades. The current collector market for the finest 1977 Washington quarter specimens is as active and competitive as it has ever been, with new generations of collectors entering the rare coin market and bringing fresh enthusiasm and financial resources to the pursuit of the coins that define the summit of this series, while established collectors who've been searching for decades refuse to yield the field, creating bidding environments at major auctions that regularly produce results that make headlines both within the numismatic community and in the broader financial press. If you've been watching this video and feeling that exciting mix of curiosity and urgency, that instinct to go find your old coins and look at them with fresh eyes, then please act on that feeling right now, because the knowledge you've gained today is genuinely valuable and genuinely actionable. You now know what to look for. You know why certain coins are extraordinarily valuable. You know how to examine specimens properly. And you know where to go for professional authentication when you find something that might be significant. The 1977 Washington quarter represents the pinnacle of everything we've explored today. A coin that carries within its most extraordinary specimens the combined weight of American monetary history, numismatic discovery, the beauty of accidental artistry, and the transformative power of knowledge. And it stands as the perfect reminder that treasure doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it sits quietly in a jar, a drawer, a collection binder, or the bottom of a bag, waiting for the person with the right knowledge to finally recognize it for what it truly is. Before you go, make sure you subscribe to NUMIS Treasure Hub right now, because this channel is your absolute best resource for discovering the hidden wealth that might already be in your possession. Smash that like button if any of these coins shocked you today. Share this video with every single person in your life who handles change, because you could literally be saving them from accidentally spending a fortune. Drop a comment below telling us which coin surprised you most and whether you're going to go check your collection after watching this. And if you find something that looks like it might match any of the varieties we've described today, tell us about it in the comments, because this community loves nothing more than a real discovery story. The coins we've explored today, the 1997P, the 1992D, the 1985P, the 1981P, and the extraordinary 1977 Washington quarter, represent just the beginning of what this channel is going to bring you, because there are dozens more coins hiding in plain sight throughout American coinage history. Coins sitting in collections and change jars and bank rolls across this country right now, waiting for the right person with the right knowledge to discover them. And that person could absolutely be you. Stay tuned to NUMIS Treasure Hub. Keep looking at your coins, and remember, the next quarter you pick up could be the one that changes everything.